had just taken a sip of coffee when Laura dropped it on me. "I think we should get a divorce," she said, scrolling through her phone like she was deciding whether to pick a new Netflix show. I almost choked on my drink, but I didn't let it show. I put the mug down slowly, set my face like it was just another morning. "Oh, okay." I rubbed my mouth with the back of my hand, making sure my voice stayed even. She glanced up, like she was waiting for something more. Maybe a fight. I don't know. It's hard to tell with Laura these days. She always has this way of keeping her thoughts just out of reach. "I'm serious, Jack," she added, still not looking at me. She was in her workout clothes, bouncing her knee up and down. I hated when she did that. "I hear you," I said, keeping my tone light. "You're sure?" Her eyes flicked up to mine then, brows furrowed, as if she didn't quite understand why I wasn't screaming, why I wasn't demanding some kind of explanation. Maybe that's what she wanted, a scene, a reason to throw everything back in my face. But I wasn't giving her that. Not now, not anymore. The weight of it all hit me harder than I expected. But I kept it in. For now. "You're not mad?" she asked, the question thrown at me like it didn't even belong in the conversation, like she couldn't compute my response. "Mad," I repeated. I smiled, a little sharper than I meant to. "I don't know. Should I be?" She stared at me a second longer, as if trying to read me, trying to figure out where I was going with this. "I just thought you'd fight for it," she muttered, voice flat. She turned back to her phone, tapping away, as if the decision had already been made. I didn't say anything, didn't move a muscle. Her voice kept going, rambling on about logistics, about what would happen next, but I wasn't really hearing her anymore. All I could feel was the quiet, too loud, too full of years I didn't notice slipping away. She wasn't here anymore. She hadn't been for a long time, but I was just now catching up to that fact. I didn't say anything else. She didn't either. I watched her leave, her sneakers tapping against the hardwood, as she grabbed her gym bag and swung the door open. The slam was quiet, just enough to make me blink. Then it was gone. The house felt emptier the moment the door shut. I sat there for a while, staring at the space where she'd been, half expecting her to come back. But she didn't. I didn't think she would. I stood up eventually, my legs a little stiff from sitting too long. I picked up my coffee mug, rinsed it out and set it in the dishwasher. I wasn't sure why I did it, habit, I guess. Something to keep my hands busy. The kitchen was tidy, almost unnervingly so. It used to be cluttered, papers, shoes, the kids' breakfast bowls. Now it felt like I was cleaning up someone else's mess. I ran my fingers along the edge of the counter, like I was touching a piece of a life that wasn't mine anymore. The sound of the faucet was loud in the silence. I walked through the house after that, eyes scanning rooms that had once felt like home. Our living room, the little office where Laura and I would sit side by side, each of us pretending to focus on work while we talked about everything and nothing. I remembered the way she would laugh when we'd argue over stupid stuff, like who left the lights on. Those arguments, those little things, felt so far away now. I couldn't remember the last time we fought, or laughed. Not in a long time. I wandered upstairs, into the bedroom. Our bed still had the indents from where we'd slept, but it was cold now. No warmth, no sense of familiarity. She'd taken most of her things, clothes, toiletries, the things she needed. The closet was half empty. The sight of it felt final. It wasn't just the absence of her things. It was everything she'd stopped leaving behind. No fight, no explanation. Just the absence. I went to the desk in the corner, opened my phone, and texted her, fingers stiff on the screen. "We'll keep this civil. No lawyers unless we have to." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I wasn't angry, not really, just resigned and tired. The message sent, and I put the phone down. The weight of it hit me, though. I'd lived through years of silence, years of little signs that something was off. The years where she started keeping secrets, pulling away slowly, little by little. I'd noticed it, but I never really wanted to admit it, never said anything out loud. Maybe I thought things would get better. Maybe I thought if I kept acting like everything was fine, it would be, but it wasn't fine. I walked out of the bedroom, glancing at the pictures hanging on the walls. Us on vacation, at family barbecues, the kids' birthdays. All of it felt like someone else's life now, frozen in time. The hallway seemed longer, emptier, as I moved down it. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of the neighbor's dog barking. Everything felt muted. The house wasn't broken yet, but it was fading. I didn't know what to do with myself. Didn't know what to do with all the space, all the silence. So, I sat on the couch, pulled a blanket over my lap, and stared at the TV. Even though it was off, the emptiness had its own weight. I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to feel something. But all I could manage was this dull, hollow feeling. Like the last few years of my life had been background noise. Like I was waiting for something to change. But it hadn't. And now it was over. I sat there, not sure when I'd move. Not sure when I'd stop waiting for something to fix it. Matt and Aaron showed up at the bar just as I was nursing my third beer. They didn't waste time getting to the point. "So, how are you handling it, man?" Matt asked, slinging his arm around the back of his chair like we were about to settle into a comfortable conversation. But there was a seriousness in his eyes that made the question feel heavier than it should have. I stared at my beer, swirling it in the glass. "Handling what?" I asked, trying to make it sound casual, but I could tell they weren't buying it. Aaron leaned in, his elbows on the table, watching me closely. "The divorce, Jack. You okay?" I gave them both a glance. "Yeah, I'm fine." I said it too quickly, but I didn't feel like dissecting it. "Not tonight. Not with them." "You sure?" Aaron pushed. You don't seem like you're falling apart." Matt snorted. "No kidding. You're acting like she just told you she's switching up the groceries or something." I shrugged, my hands gripping the edges of my glass. She was calm about it. No yelling, no drama. Like she was talking about getting a new couch. I shook my head. "I don't get it. It's like she wasn't even affected." Matt raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. "You don't think it's because she's already checked out? Maybe she's been planning this for a while." "Maybe," I said, not sure if I wanted to believe that. The idea of her planning it all in advance stung, but it made sense. "I don't know. Felt like she made up her mind a while ago." Aaron looked at me, a little concerned. You don't think she's seeing someone else, do you?" The words hung there like a weight I didn't want to pick up. I stared into my beer, pretending to consider the possibility, but I wasn't ready to go down that road. "Not yet. No. I don't know. It doesn't feel like that. She didn't act guilty or anything." Matt leaned back, arms crossed. "That's what I'm saying, man. People don't just decide to walk away without a reason. Maybe she's seeing someone." I looked at Matt, feeling the slight tug of frustration. "I'm not jumping to conclusions, all right? I don't know what the hell's going on. Maybe she's just done. Maybe she's just tired of me." Aaron gave me a cautious look, his voice softer. "Look, I get it. But Jack, you've got to be careful with how you handle this. Don't let her pull you into whatever mess she's made. Keep your head straight. Don't do anything stupid." I nodded, taking a long sip from my glass, but I wasn't really hearing him. The conversation felt distant, like I was hearing it through a fog. I wasn't ready to think about the mess, about her and whatever she'd already done. I didn't want to go there. Matt's eyes narrowed as he studied me. "You really seem okay with this, though. Are you sure you're not hiding something? You're not just numb, are you?" The word hit me harder than I expected. Numb. That's exactly how I felt. Like I was floating just outside of it all, disconnected from everything that should have mattered. The thought of getting angry, of making a scene, didn't feel like something I was even capable of anymore. "I'm not numb," I said slowly, like I was convincing myself more than them. "I'm just dealing with it." Aaron took a deep breath, then glanced at Matt. "I don't know, man. This doesn't seem like you. You're usually a lot more fired up about this kind of thing. Something feels off." I didn't know how to respond to that. The fact that they were noticing only made it feel more real. I'd been keeping it together on the outside, but I could feel something slipping, like a part of me had already been left behind, and I wasn't sure what to do with the rest of it. The fact that they noticed, that they could see it, hit me harder than I wanted it to. I don't know. Maybe I trailed off. There was no point in finishing. It felt like I had no words to explain how I was feeling. No words for how strange everything felt. Matt and Aaron exchanged glances, their concern clear, but neither of them pushed it any further. They both knew that when I shut down, there was no point in forcing me to open up. The conversation shifted after that, back to the usual bullshit. Sports, work, whatever we usually talked about when we didn't know what else to say. But the edge was still there, lingering. I couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, I wasn't just losing Laura. I was losing myself. And, apparently, my friends could see it too. By the time the night wound down and we all said our goodbyes, I realized that I didn't know who I was anymore. And neither did they. It was like I'd been floating through my life, caught between my marriage and everything else. And now that it was falling apart, I didn't know how to put it back together. It wasn't just Laura I'd lost. It was me, too. I came home to an empty house. No shoes by the door. No half-drunk coffee mugs left on the counter. No clutter scattered on the kitchen table. The air felt wrong. Too quiet. Like the house was holding its breath. I stepped inside and just stood there, taking it in, not sure where to start. It felt like a place I used to know, but the walls felt colder now. Less like home and more like a stranger's place. Her stuff was gone. Every bit of it. No clothes in the closet. No shoes under the bed. No makeup strewn across the bathroom counter like usual. Not even the half-used bottle of shampoo I always complained about taking up space. The space where all those things used to be was just empty, like she'd been preparing for this moment for a long time. There was a note on the kitchen counter. I almost didn't want to read it, but I did anyway. I unfolded it. It was simple, short, like she hadn't cared to put much into it. I'm taking the kids for the weekend. I'll drop them off Sunday afternoon. Please don't call. My stomach tightened, a weight pressing down that I couldn't shake. There was no explanation. No, I'm sorry, or anything that felt even remotely like she might be second-guessing it. The casual tone in the note made it worse. She didn't even need to explain herself to me anymore. I put the note down slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of the paper like it held some kind of answer. I walked through the house, my feet dragging as I passed through each room. Everything was pristine. Too pristine. It was the quietest I'd ever heard this place. The air in the living room felt stale, and the couch where we'd spent hours watching shows, the space where we'd sit together and argue about stupid things, was now just a piece of furniture. No marks on the cushions. No glasses on the coffee table. Not even a throw blanket tossed over the back. It was like she never even lived here. I moved upstairs, toward the bedroom, feeling the weight of each step. The bed was still made, but not how we'd left it. Lopsided and half unfolded, like we were both too tired to care some nights. The emptiness of the room hit me harder than I expected. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, staring at the bed, trying to make sense of how this happened. It was only when I opened the closet that the full reality of it smacked me. Everything of hers was gone. Clothes, shoes, the damn yoga mats I tripped over every other day. Not a single trace of her was left behind. I thought about how we'd spent our mornings here, how I'd get ready for work while she picked out her outfit or checked her phone. Her lips pursed in that way she did when she was deep in thought. How long had it been since I'd really noticed any of that? It felt like years, like I was looking at someone else's life instead of mine. I shut the door softly behind me and walked down the hall, the house stretching out before me like a maze I couldn't navigate. The kids' rooms were silent, their toys lined up like they'd never been touched. The quiet was deafening. I had the urge to call her, but I didn't. I was done with trying to reach her, trying to fix what had been broken for so long. It was just so final. The whole house felt like a tomb. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall, doing my best to ignore the knot that had formed in my chest. Couldn't settle. Couldn't relax. There was no noise, no Laura, no kids running through the hall, no life filling up the empty spaces. Just me. It was hard to believe how far she'd gone. Physically, emotionally, mentally, how she just checked out of everything and everyone without any warning. I thought about all the little signs, the things I'd ignored or brushed off. The long days at work, the nights when she was too tired to talk, the lack of interest in anything that used to matter to both of us. She'd been gone for longer than I realized. I just hadn't seen it until now. I couldn't figure out if I was angry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty. I checked the time, but I wasn't ready for the evening to end. The silence felt unbearable, like if I let it last too long, it would swallow me whole. I stayed on the couch. No TV, no music, no distractions. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the house settling. The emptiness settled in deeper, and I found myself wondering how long it would take to get used to it. But I knew I wouldn't. Not really. Not while everything that had made this house feel like home was already gone. I spent the next few hours scrolling through Laura's old messages. I couldn't help myself. My mind kept going back to that note she left. The way she just left without a second thought, like there was no hesitation, no second guessing. It had to mean something, didn't it? I started with the obvious stuff, her phone. I'd never been the type to go through her messages. But tonight, I wasn't exactly respecting any boundaries. She'd always been the one to guard her privacy, and I never questioned it. But now I was desperate for any kind of answer. At first, I skimmed through the texts between her and her friends. Nothing stood out. Just the usual small talk, plans to meet up, complaints about work, grocery lists, the occasional meme. She seemed the same as she always did with them, distant but familiar. There was nothing there that screamed betrayal or anything out of the ordinary. But then I found the email. It was buried in an old account I hadn't even known she still used. I don't know why I clicked it. Something about the subject line caught my eye. Future plans? And before I could stop myself, I was reading it. The message was months old, dated in early spring. She'd sent it to someone I didn't know, someone with an unremarkable name. The contents were sharp, like she'd thought everything through carefully before putting it down in words. I know this is hard, but I've made up my mind. I'm moving forward without him. It's been a long time coming, and I can't keep pretending. I don't think he'll ever understand, but that's okay. He'll adjust. He always does. The kids will be fine, and I'll make sure of it. I stared at the words on the screen for a long time. The date on the email, the coldness in her words, the fact that it was so matter-of-fact, like it had all been decided before I even had a clue. It hit me harder than anything else that had happened. Harder than the note, harder than her walking out. I don't know what I expected, some kind of moment of clarity, maybe a reason I could understand. But this felt like a punch to the gut. It was so calculated, so cold. Like she'd been planning it all along and never once thought to clue me in. I felt a sharp, hollow knot in my chest. She planned this. She didn't just wake up one day and decide it was over. She'd been thinking about it, deciding how to make it work without me. Without even talking to me. I closed the email, but the words kept echoing in my head. I could hear them over and over, like a broken record, until my pulse was pounding in my ears. I don't know how long I sat there, my phone still in my hand, staring at the blank screen. Part of me wanted to go straight to her, to confront her, to demand an answer. But I couldn't. She had already made her decision. She had already checked out, and I'd been too blind to see it. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. I opened a few more emails, trying to see if there was more, but everything after that just felt like filler. Lists, receipts, random stuff that didn't matter. But I couldn't stop. I kept searching, like I could find something to explain it, something to make sense of it all. Nothing. There was nothing else. I set the phone down on the table, my hands trembling slightly. I couldn't decide if I felt betrayed or numb. I think I felt both. I couldn't remember the last time I really knew her. The way she had always seemed so sure, so self-contained. It made me question everything. Was I just a part of her life that didn't matter enough? Was I something she'd grown tired of? Someone to leave behind while she moved on without me? I stood up, pacing around the room, trying to shake off the feeling that was wrapping itself tighter around my chest. How long had this been going on? How long had she been checked out, just waiting for the right moment to walk away? Couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought we had a connection, that there was something real there. But now I was wondering if I ever really knew who she was at all. Or if I'd just been someone who fit into her life for a while, until I didn't anymore. I felt stupid for not seeing it. Stupid for not realizing she'd already started letting go when I was still trying to make it work. My thoughts spiraled, and I couldn't stop it. The anger I'd been holding in earlier now surfaced, but it wasn't the kind of anger I expected. It wasn't fiery or loud. It was the slow burn of betrayal, of regret. The kind of anger that gnawed at you quietly, turning everything you thought was real into ash. I sat back down at the table, staring at my phone again. I didn't want to read that email again. I didn't want to keep thinking about it. But I couldn't stop. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was everything I thought I knew about my life, about Laura, crumbling into dust. I didn't expect to see her there. Not today, not like this. I walked into the coffee shop, already lost in my thoughts, and the second I caught sight of her, I froze. Laura was sitting at a corner table, a man beside her. Someone I'd never seen before. He was relaxed, laughing at something she'd said, totally at ease with her. They looked like they were in the middle of a conversation. But the moment I stood there, frozen, she caught my eye. I felt the rush of heat rise up my neck, but I stayed still, trying to make myself disappear. It didn't work. She was already turning toward me, a slight, almost imperceptible shift in her posture as she acknowledged my presence. "Hey, Jack," she said, her voice flat. No warmth, no surprise. Just the simple greeting you give someone you barely know. The man beside her didn't even seem to notice me at first, still smiling, leaning back in his chair. I stood there, unsure of what to do, whether to walk away or to force some kind of conversation out of this awkward moment. Laura's eyes flicked to him and then back to me, her lips twitching for a second, almost like she was deciding how to handle this. She sat up a little straighter, like she was suddenly aware of the space between us. "This is Ben," she said, a casual introduction. "Ben, this is Jack, my ex-husband." The word stung, like a slap I wasn't expecting. Ex-husband. That was it. No apology for the awkwardness, no hesitation. It was like she wasn't even bothered by my presence, as if we'd never shared a life together. Ben smiled at me, extending his hand, completely at ease. "Nice to meet you, man." He looked like someone who had no idea what had just happened, no understanding of the wreckage that had been left behind. I forced myself to shake his hand, my palm cold and stiff. "Yeah, you too." My voice came out rougher than I wanted, but I couldn't help it. I was trying to control the surge of anger and confusion, trying to keep it in check. It wasn't working. I glanced at Laura, but she didn't meet my eyes for long. She looked down at the table, then back up at Ben, her smile effortless, like everything was fine, like nothing had changed. I swallowed hard. "I didn't know you were seeing someone," I said, the words tasting sour in my mouth. She nodded, still calm, unaffected. "Yeah, well, things change." She reached for her coffee, not looking at me anymore, her focus fully back on Ben, like I was just another stranger passing by. The silence stretched out, heavy and uncomfortable. I could feel my hands tightening into fists at my sides, the urge to demand something from her. Anything. Swelling in my chest, but I didn't do it. Couldn't. I wasn't going to make a scene in front of them. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I turned away, feeling the cold weight of her indifference pressing against me. "All right?" I muttered, the words barely leaving my lips. "I'll let you two get back to it." I tried to make it sound like it was no big deal, but I knew it wasn't convincing. As I turned to leave, I heard Ben's voice behind me, still light and casual, still not a hint of understanding about the mess we'd all been through. "Take care, man." The door closed behind me with a soft chime, but the sound of it seemed to echo in my skull, my heart still pounding from the collision of reality and my own unraveling. Outside, the world kept moving, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Laura, my wife, was sitting there with some guy who probably had no idea about all the years we'd spent together. He didn't know about the house we built, the nights we spent arguing, the way I held on even when things got hard. He didn't have to live through the slow burn of everything slipping away, piece by piece. But she didn't care. She didn't care about me or any of it. I leaned against the brick wall outside the coffee shop, my breath coming too fast, and I fought to keep my chest from caving in. I wasn't angry, not the way I expected to be, but I felt something else, something worse. Like I didn't matter, like I had never mattered. I wasn't part of her life anymore. I wasn't even someone she needed to explain herself to, and that was the hardest part of it all. The part that made me feel like I was invisible. I came across the apartment lease by accident. It was tucked away in a folder on the kitchen counter, buried under a pile of paperwork. I didn't even know Laura had left this stuff behind. Our bills, insurance papers, a handful of old receipts. But there it was, just another thing I'd missed. The lease was dated 3 months ago, signed under Laura's name, and the apartment was in a part of town I barely recognized. A trendy area, full of upscale cafes, boutique shops, and too many people who seemed like they were always on the move. It was the kind of place Laura would have never considered before. Too young, too polished, not her. I stared at the address on the lease for a long time, trying to make sense of it. My pulse started to pick up, and I felt that familiar knot twist in my stomach again. Had she been planning this all along? How long had she known she was leaving? I pulled the folder open wider, half expecting to find more clues, and I wasn't disappointed. In the back of it, there was an envelope with the name of a gym on it. We'd never gone to that gym, never even mentioned it. But there it was, a shared subscription under Laura's name and another that looked like it was hers, too. I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. She'd been going to a gym I didn't know about. She'd been paying for this for months, and I had no idea. How many hours had she spent there? How many days had passed where she was hiding all of this from me? I slammed the folder shut, my heart beating too fast. The thought of her being out there, living a life that didn't involve me, was suffocating. But the worst part wasn't even the lease or the gym membership. It was the realization that none of this had been sudden. She'd been planning her exit, piece by piece, and I'd been too blind to see it. I couldn't stop myself. I had to confront her. I had to ask her what the hell was going on. When Laura came by to pick up the kids, I didn't waste any time. I met her at the door, holding the folder like it was some kind of damning evidence. "What's this?" I asked, my voice low, trying to keep it together. She stopped, looking at me with that calm, almost distant expression she always wore these days. "What's what?" I shoved the lease in her face. "This apartment. Why didn't you tell me about it?" Her eyes flicked to it for just a second. Then she looked away, like it didn't matter. "It's nothing, Jack. Just some place I was looking at. It doesn't mean anything." "Doesn't mean anything?" I was almost laughing, except it felt more like a choke. "You've been paying for this place for months, Laura. How long were you planning on keeping this from me?" She crossed her arms, her eyes hardening. "It's not like that. I just needed a space, a place to think, okay? It's nothing serious." I could feel the frustration crawling under my skin. A space? A place to think? I shook my head, trying to process the way she was brushing this off like it was some kind of casual thing. "You've been living there, Laura. You've been living somewhere else, and I had no idea." "I've been taking care of things," she said flatly, like she was talking about paying bills, not ending our marriage. "This doesn't have to be a big deal." "Doesn't have to be a big deal?" The words felt like they were scraping my throat raw. "You're not even acting like any of this matters. Do you even care anymore? Or am I just a thing you're trying to get rid of?" Her face softened, but it wasn't the softness I was used to. It was pity. She looked at me like she was talking to a child. "Jack, don't make this harder than it is. You knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. It's just time." My chest tightened, and I fought to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, but you don't even seem sorry. You don't seem like you even care that you're walking away from everything we built. Our life, our kids." She sighed, rubbing the back of her neck. "I do care. I just can't keep pretending anymore. We're both better off." The finality in her voice hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't fighting for this. She wasn't looking back. It had all been decided a long time ago, and I was just now seeing it for what it was. I stood there, speechless for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right, she had checked out. She had been mentally gone for months, maybe longer, and I hadn't even known. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't feel anything close to that. I just felt hollow, like I was standing on the edge of something that used to be mine, and now I was watching it crumble away. "All right?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're right. We're both better off." I turned away, not able to look at her anymore. I didn't want to see her face, the one that had once been the woman I loved, the one that now felt so distant. I didn't want to hear her say anything else that would confirm how far gone we really were. I heard the door click behind me, but I didn't turn back. Couldn't. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to get answers. I thought if I just went to her apartment, if I saw her face, heard her say something, I might finally understand what had happened. Maybe I could get the closure I'd been craving. I showed up at her new place late that afternoon, not sure if I was ready to face her, but too restless to stay away. I rang the bell, and when the door opened, I was hit with a sudden wave of disbelief. She was settled in, relaxed, almost happy, like she had already moved on. Laura was standing there in a pair of jeans and a loose shirt, looking like she hadn't a care in the world. It wasn't the picture of a woman who'd just torn her life apart. It was the picture of someone who had already left it all behind. And then I saw him, the guy from the coffee shop. Then, he was sitting on the couch, laughing at something Laura had said, as if they'd been together for years, not weeks. The sight of them together was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't even process it. I thought I'd be angry or hurt, but what hit me hardest was the realization that I didn't matter anymore. She was fine without me. I felt like an outsider in my own life. "Laura," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. She looked at me, and for a split second, I saw that flicker of recognition, like I wasn't just a stranger standing in her doorway. But it was gone before I could even register it. "Jack," she said, her voice calm. "What are you doing here?" I didn't wait for her to invite me in. I just stepped past her, not sure what I was looking for, but sure as hell not leaving until I got something real from her. "We need to talk," I said, my eyes locking onto hers. Ben stood up from the couch, stretching his arms like it was no big deal. "Hey man, I'm Ben," he said, extending his hand like we were about to start talking about sports or whatever. I didn't take his hand. I didn't want to be here, but I wasn't about to back down now. "Yeah, I know who you are," I muttered, ignoring the awkwardness that filled the room like a thick cloud. Laura shot Ben a look, and he sat back down, clearly picking up on the tension. "I'll leave you guys to talk," he said, giving me a quick glance before heading to the other room. I didn't watch him go. I didn't care. My focus was on Laura. "So, this is it, huh? You've already moved on. That fast. And I'm just supposed to accept it?" She didn't flinch, didn't apologize. She crossed her arms, her eyes never leaving mine. "It's not like that, Jack." "Then what is it?" I demanded, my frustration boiling over. "Tell me, what the hell happened to us? Was it just nothing to you? Did I ever really matter?" Her expression didn't change. There was no guilt, no remorse, just that cold indifference that I was starting to hate. "I did care, Jack," she said, her voice calm, almost measured, "but not the way you needed me to." The words hit me like ice water, freezing everything inside me. I stood there for a second, stunned, trying to make sense of them. What the hell does that even mean? "It means I couldn't be the person you needed anymore. You wanted something from me that I just couldn't give." She sighed, like this whole conversation was exhausting her. "I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. I couldn't keep pretending." I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't anything I thought she would be in this moment. She was just cold, distant, so far removed from the woman I'd loved. "I've been gone for a long time, Jack," she added, her voice quieter now. You just didn't see it. I could feel the weight of her words crashing down on me. I've been so damn blind. I hadn't seen it, not really. I'd been living in this delusion, thinking we could fix it, thinking if I tried hard enough we could get back to what we used to have. But Laura had already let go. And now I was just catching up to the truth, late as always. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, I said. Not even sure I believed it myself. But I had to say it, had to make her understand how much this hurt. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, just nodded slowly, as if she already knew it was coming. I turned away, not able to look at her anymore. I felt like I was suffocating, like the weight of everything, of her, was crushing me. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to end it. I just had to leave. Goodbye, Laura, I muttered, the words coming out strangled, as if saying them out loud made it all too real. I didn't wait for her response. Couldn't. I left her apartment and didn't look back. But as I walked away, the finality of her words echoed in my head, and something inside me broke. This wasn't closure. It wasn't anything I could control. The chapter was closed, but it wasn't on my terms. It was hers, and somehow that made it worse. I wasn't sure if I could ever get over that. The days stretched on, one blending into the next. It didn't feel like a clean break. More like I was slowly floating away from something I couldn't hold on to anymore. I spent the first few weeks just trying to get used to the silence. At first, it felt like I was suffocating. Like I couldn't breathe without Laura's presence filling up the spaces in our house. But then, gradually, the silence became more familiar. I didn't have to make small talk with anyone. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I started clearing things out. Pictures from the walls, her clothes that were still lingering in the back of the closet. It didn't feel like a cleansing, exactly. It was just necessary. The space felt too full of her absence, and I needed to make room for whatever came next. The shelves in the kitchen were emptier, the drawers cleaner. Even the kids' room, where we used to gather together, now felt like a reminder of something that was falling apart. The kids adjusted quickly to the new schedule, weekends with Laura, weekdays with me. At first, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of questions. They still asked about her, about why she wasn't home, why things were different. I didn't have the answers. I told them it was just a change, that sometimes things change and we had to roll with it. They didn't push. They were still kids, still trying to make sense of it, just like I was. As time went on, I started to realize that I wasn't surviving this so much as I was learning to exist within it. I wasn't trying to make things right or fix anything. It wasn't about Laura anymore. It was about me, figuring out how to rebuild, even when I didn't know what I was rebuilding for. There were moments when I felt the weight of the freedom, when I remembered that I could do what I wanted, when I could leave the house messy or not worry about making dinner plans for the night. It was freeing in a way, but there was something lonely about it too. I wasn't used to being alone, not in the way I was now. The weight of it all hit hardest at night, when I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. That quiet detachment Laura showed me, how she could just check out, it was becoming clearer. It was the most telling part of our marriage. She had been gone long before she left. She just didn't tell me. I'd been chasing the wrong thing for too long, hoping for answers that would never come. I didn't need the explanation anymore. I didn't need her to apologize or make sense of any of it. I had to accept that I'd never get the answers I wanted, no matter how many times I asked myself what went wrong. The reality of it, the quiet finality of it all, was settling in. Maybe I didn't need to understand it, and maybe I wouldn't ever. It didn't matter anymore. It wasn't about finding closure. It was about figuring out how to live with the truth, and right now that was the only thing I could control. So I kept going. One day at a time. Maybe that was the hardest part, to realize that life went on without me ever getting the answers I was desperate for. But it was also the most liberating thing of all. It didn't matter anymore. Not really. And that, more than anything, was what finally gave me peace.